Is for Dragon Kites the Gaming. He's the reigning world champion, Oliveira.
And up here in the top left-hand side of the map, we have our blue Protoss player from SSLT. He is Firefly. Fascinating logo that they have.
Starving, it's a Chinese idiom, right? Where it's something to the effect of a starving camel in the desert's like still better than a horse or something like that. I don't quite remember. Scarlett explained it to me once, and I don't quite remember. But it's like, effectively, you want something that is like better adapted. I forget.
Yeah. I can kind of get the idiom. I don't understand why the camel is eating then, because then it's not a starving camel anymore. But you know what? I get it. I'm on board with it. It's a logo with a lot of character. I'll put it that way.
It's look, if you're starving, what do you want to do, Ravi? What are you trying to make sure you do? You eat. So
I eat the stem of the grapes. Yes.
It's a bouquet of grapes. He wants to make sure the fans are able to eat as well.
That's true. Yeah, it clearly is just delivering the grapes to something else. I like it.
Well,
we'll be seeing what Firefly is going to be delivering for us in this series, because I do think this is one of those matchups where there's a lot of like chaos and stuff you can kind of throw out into the matchup and stuff. There's a lot of like shenanigans and things that Protoss players can beget into the matchup, and we'll see what he's able to bust out over here. But first, it's going to be just dealing with the usual kind of PvT things, dealing with the Reaper, trying to deny some scouting information.
It's going to be curious what we're going to see here. So ZVT is probably the matchup that has the least room for upset. It's so mechanical that, if you're better, you're better. If you're worse, you're worse. There's not a lot of all-ins on either side that make that happen. But PvT is maybe a little bit more on the, okay, you can hide something and make it work. Although it feels like as of late that is less true from the Protoss side at the highest level. I mean, you're going to open 3-gate blink, you're going to open maybe 4-gate blink, you're going to open Stargate. Like that is kind of the gamut of the openers here. We're not really seeing a lot of variability, a lot of weird builds kind of that allow you to maybe kind of pull what, maybe there's a DT play, but that kind of is the extent of it.
Yeah, I think that's oftentimes the case. There are a few times we'll see some weird shenanigans and stuff coming on out. As I say that, we have Firefly going for a blink opening, which is pretty normal, but it's Oliveira who's going to be throwing out something that I won't say is actually like the weirdest thing ever to see anymore, because I feel like I've seen more and more Terran players do this. But going for Cloak Banshees is definitely not like what we would have ever considered standard even like a couple months ago.
I wouldn't consider it standard now. You see it, certainly, but it's not really going to... Again, it's not super common. Good news, though, for Firefly is that he is dropping that Robo. I mean, it's pretty standard, right? Rare is the game where you go Twilight and you really delay that Robo, at least in PvT. So he will theoretically have an Observer round. He will be able to defend against this, but... I mean, Oliveira is doing a good job of being annoying right now. Reapers and Hellions, if the army of Firefly isn't too careful, and actually, he's just going to get the depth for free. That really shouldn't happen.
That really sucks, too, because another underrated part of how good the setup over here for Oliveira has been with even just the little Reaper movements and things like that is Firefly didn't do what a lot of pro players normally get to do with their first Adept, which is send it across the map and get scouting information. Firefly is completely in the dark actually right now. He's going to be lucky that, like you said, that Observer's popping out right at the nick of time. He's got the shield battery up, which I don't actually want to say is, luck. That actually was a bit of foresight over here for him to just ensure he had some kind of defenses over here. But where is that Observer? It's finally making its way over to the main base, but the Banshee's going to make it out of there safely. And it's just going to be all about this big follow-up attack Firefly is gearing up for. He is not thinking about third base. He powered out a decent number of additional gateways. He got up the Warp Prism. He's been warping in non-stop stalkers. Like, he really has to get big damage done with this.
And what a weird number of gateways, too. I mean, normally it's 4-gate. Okay, that's a blink timing. It's 6-gate, right? That's pressure. Or that's an all-in. This is 5. Like, it's just kind of splitting the middle.
I think it's 6 now.
Is it?
You fell trapped to the counting the gateways as one warp gate was still warping in.
I thought I was like specifically looking to see whether there was one in production, but you know what? I just can't count. It's too early in the morning. That's fine. This is a 6-gate blink all in, and there's a lot of pressure there, but Fear Dragon, there's a bunker. There are 2 tanks. Doctors, they blink right on over the other side. Raven's got to drop the auto turret, but the tanks are going to go down very quickly. Here's the thing, though. So many tanks have died, and the Banshees on the other side, they've gotten value here. So, yes, Zealot's going to warp in right now, but the first round of this is not working out super well. This thing, though, the second one, there are no tanks here anymore. The bunker's out of range. It's just a couple Marines firing, and Firefly seems very well positioned to move on straight on in. It's 2 bunkers. There's nothing inside of them until right now. These Stalkers, they're hard to deal with. There we go. Another tank's going to go down. If the third one comes down the ramp, it's going to fall here as well, you'd think. But the defensive Banshee, it's worth so much here.
And on the other side of the map, the other Banshee is also continuing to get additional worker damage. So remember, Firefly is getting a lot of damage done, but if he loses the Warp Prism, he loses his ability to reinforce, and he loses his ability to effectively end the game, and that's what he needed from this. With how much damage he took on the other side of the map, he needed to basically end the game.
Yeah, he really did. The defensive Banshee did so much. You don't think of Banshees as a solid thing to use against Stalkers, right? It's like, well, Stalkers will just kill them. But when you have Cloak and there is no detection on the following side, they actually do they do bonus damage to armored units. Stalkers are armor units. They are not tanky units whatsoever. So you just kind of tend to do a very good job and can kill them very quickly. And that Banshee, I don't even know how many kills it has. It's only 2 kills, but it did so much damage. But Firefly, he understands. He can't go into this into a mid game. He's down 11 workers. So another Warp Prism. He's got Stalkers here. We're going to have to see whether round 2 works a little bit better.
Yeah, there's a lot pinned on this because, again, he just does not have an economy to fall back to. He's almost on just a little bit better than a 1-base economy. So here we go. Blink forward in the main base. Auto turret, Marauders, Banshee just going to absolutely deny this. There is no way that these Stalkers are going to get anything done. And Firefly has to tap out. Oliveira takes the first game.
You know, Fear Dragon, I was really thinking. I had a lot of hope that was actually going to work out for Fire. It was looking like it was going to cut through for Firefly right there, right? He's on the edge. He's not in bunker range, so the Marines can't hide in that. All the tanks have gone down. And I think if he doesn't lose the Warp Prism and he doesn't lose his entire economy pretty much to that Banshee on the other side, I think he probably cuts through there. But instead, you know, it doesn't. Instead, he loses that and he loses everything and you just lose the momentum.
No, I'm definitely with you. I think that if the Banshee, even if we just say, like, if the Banshee on the other side of the map doesn't do as much damage, which also forces Warp-ins back at home as well, that we didn't even get to mention, you know, that uses Warp-ins that are at home, that are just means that there's Stalkers that are sitting at home that could have been used on the offense and everything. If he had been able to get up some kind of early defenses and stuff to the Banshees without taking all that economic damage, then the Warp Prism also isn't forced to just do this very fast loop around over the main base. His attention isn't divided, so maybe he keeps more Stalkers alive with a Blink Micro and everything. Like, there's so many things that can go differently off of just one thing going a little bit better. But I think that's kind of the danger of facing a player like Oliveira that maybe is coming in a bit more favored and stuff, is that they can use even just those small little groups of units and stuff and kind of divide up your attention to equalize games. Even when things were actually looking pretty decent for you, you realize, but that one thing that they did, that one extra little detail that I didn't address, and that's what kind of causes the massive collapse of the snowball effect of like, oh, well, shoot, I'm not in a good position anymore. This could have been a good position, but they just outplayed me on this one little aspect or something. So I like the play there from Firefly, but it's really, really tough. He wasn't able to get that first W there when would look like a good situation.
Yeah, you know, Oliveira hit him with the one piece of kryptonite Firefly wasn't ready for. It's called winning the game.
Yeah, that's one way to put it. There's true. I like that.
But we do have a new map, right? Royal Blood's map 2. And do you think we see him take the gold here, Firefly?
I mean, okay, this is just me. I'm not the biggest fan of taking the gold in PvT on this map.
I mean, we've seen Hero mess around with it, Max Packs. I'm not going to say it's the most successful thing, but we've seen them try, okay? You know, like...
Okay, how early are we talking?
Natural.
Natural? Oh, man. You know what? I'll wait to see. But like,
All right.
yeah.
So if he takes the gold base as a natural, you're gonna predict that he takes it. Got it. Well, don't want to waste any more time because the game's here and we're gonna figure that out one way or the other.
All right.
In the upper right, still don't know if he's gonna take that gold base, but for now, for the Starving Camels, Firefly.
And down here on the bottom left-hand side of the map, the still reigning world champion setting up 1-0. He is Oliveira, representing Team DKZ.
How do you feel about the new logo? Right? We have you had Dragon Phoenix Gaming, right, which was a pretty recognizable logo, and then you had DPG. Then you had Kaitza Gaming, right, which probably their logo was not as fun as DPG, which is, I mean, that's fair. But together we have this lightning bolt, fire, dragon, Ouroboros thing. How do you feel about it?
Honestly, it really reminds me of just the Kaizi logo when you look at the overlay, or not the like logo on the ground, but the actual overlay and stuff. Like, to me, that just looks like a recoloring of the Kaizi logo. But I don't know. Yeah, I think it's an okay logo. I'm not gonna fire any shots or anything. I like their logo. I think I'm a fan of simple logos though. I actually kind of like the simplistic style of the overlays logo and like that Kaizi logo. It's kind of like, here's a simple like 3-color image and stuff, and I think it looks like, that's why a lot of the reason why I like the Team Liquid logo and things like that. So I'm a fan of those kind of logos for sure.
I mean, the Team Liquid logo is just all-time great. Maybe that's because they have, probably one of the oldest esports organizations in existence, and regardless of whether we want it or not, it's just been like beaten in our heads that this exists and we're fans of it and it's gonna be okay, because it feels like, I don't know, what's a nice warm mug of hot chocolate. I was gonna say coffee, but I'm not sure that is the most calming drink to everyone.
Yeah, I think that's entirely fair. Small little minor thing from Firefly. I think he like accidentally was trying to queue up his Twilight Council a little bit early, then like reconsidered, is like, oh wait, actually I need to get up a second gateway and things like that. So maybe kind of just small nerves or something kind of playing an effect here. Just is not making any like major mistakes. I don't want to like over focus on it or anything like that, but it is just never a good feeling when you kind of start down the series 0-1. And he is going to be up against another one of these like 2 Reaper Hellion follow-up openings from Oliveira. Well, I say that, but okay, no, Hellion did just pop out. Yeah, so he's going to have a handful of these interesting little unit compositions poking at the front of his front door.
Yeah, this time though, instead, I mean, the Hellions are out, sure, but it's 3 Marines. And first of all, he did a great job in the middle of the map trying to catch the Adept, but it shades right on through, so it's okay. But now you got a fairly significant army for this game state, especially with the Adept on the other side. It's a Sentry, it's a Stalker. Yes, we're going to see some of these units fall down, but I mean, this is going to be a dead pylon. There's nothing here. I mean, there will be no shield battery. If there is, I mean, it actually isn't powered. The Sentry has to run away. Stalker actually may just fall. And I mean, there we go. Sentry goes down. That's a lot of gas. So even as the Stalker doesn't die, I think we consider that one very worth it there for Oliveira. He gets a pylon. Supply blocks Firefly. And actually supply blocks until the second pylon goes down. He gets that Sentry. I mean, that's no scouting, right? You get that Sentry early because you want to have a hallucination into Terran's main as quick as possible. And when you don't have it, that's awkward.
No, 100%. Oliver's going to be thrilled about how all of that went down. And behind this, you can kind of just get up with siege tanks, get up a Liberator, which I think is a great way to capitalize on the fact that there's not really going to be a lot of scouting potential here for Firefly for a little bit. The Observer is going to have to move across the map, and I think that it does see that there's still like a Reaper or something around on the map, but it's going to be a while before he gets to the other side of the map. The Liberator will basically be in Firefly's mineral line, as that Observer would have gotten any kind of scouting information off anyways.
Yeah, and this is, man, I feel so bad for Firefly because it feels like in part he's losing the build order roulette. Game 1, or build order roulette, like game 1, he just kind of got bought by Banshees because I mean, realistically, it wasn't the first round of the Banshees. It was his decision to go all in, and then he didn't quite handle the Banshee on the other side. But this time, he would love to have Blink right now to be able to deal with the Liberator wherever it ends up. But, he's not. His blink is much more delayed because he went for very quick Colossus play, and if he gets into it, if he gets these 2 Colossus out with extended thermal lance, like as Oliveira is pushing through, which is going to happen with this build, he's going to be fine. But he doesn't really have the mobility against this Liberator play. But I guess good news for him, Oliveira's not trying to abuse that. He just has it behind the mineral line, I guess, waiting for whenever he moves out. Yeah, he really doesn't want to move.
That's the first. I don't think I've actually seen a Terran player siege up their Liberator on pure dead air space.
You see it occasionally, right? I just don't want to be aggroed in whatsoever.
Yeah.
Power does this a lot, actually.
Yeah, fair enough then. Well, that Liberator is going to be parked there for absolute darn sure. And that does give Firefly, like you were saying, a little bit more time to not only get up things like maybe a few extra stalkers eventually, but Blink is going to be the big thing he's going to be able to finish up that helps deal with a little bit to hurt Liberator Craftsman. And also, he did go for a pretty fast Robotics Bay. He started up that Robotics Bay right around the time that kind of early aggression from Oliveira had finished up. So he's able to get out his second Colossus before this push actually is even into the center of the map. So I think if he's really fast about it and chronos something out, maybe he gets a third one out or something during the attack, or maybe he's able to get out a single disruptor. Oh my God, Firefly, please do not meet this army in the middle of the map with your entire Colossus ball.
You know what? I don't feel like I would hate that, actually. He's got a couple sentries, right, which is nice. It means that you can kind of force field things off, and if you take the fight in the middle of the map, it means the tanks are not sieged. But we do have to pay attention. Of course, that Liberator that we talked about earlier on is getting damaged. Stalker's Blink on top of the tanks. One's going to go down. Second one falls here as well. And now it's just the bio, and with 2 Colossus here, that feels difficult. And by the way, that Liberator that we were worried about, it seems like it's dead. Certainly, it only got 3 probes, so Firefly, he gets both tanks. He loses what? 2 Stalkers, 3 Stalkers. He's very happy with how this game is going.
Oh yeah, I mean, that was actually a really excellent trade there. Like you were saying, the Colossus putting in phenomenal amounts of work. Thermal Lance finishing up just seconds before that engagement actually began was a massive boon for Firefly. He was able to really take advantage of that, alongside Shield Battery Overcharge just really putting in the work as well. So now he's got a lot of leeway to work with because he just cleaned up so much of that army for Oliveira. Maybe, yeah, he's gonna have to deal with some drop harassment and things like that, but he's able to just start focusing in on the additional transitionary phase things like getting up Charge, getting up a Templar Archives, adding some Archons and Rana as composition. I mean, he's really going to be getting into a solid groove here.
Yeah, no, certainly. The good news for Oliveira, though, is that he went for this 630-ish stim timing. His Widow Mine Drop's going to go off, gets nothing. He went for this more aggressive option. And the weird thing about this build is because you get... It's such a more aggressive option that it actually gets a quicker third than a bunch of other builds. Like, the third base is done now. It's on location for Oliveira at 8:30. Normally, I mean, this would be only halfway done if you went for like the standard 3-1-1. Run across the map, your stim's done at 7:30. You have this really powerful army. So that means that while this pressure from Oliveira, you know, it didn't get a ton of work done, and army supply is very equal. And he does have to be pretty worried about the follow-up attack, right? With +1, +2 just about done, charge 3 Colossus. If he can sustain that, his economy, it's not all that far behind.
Yeah, we'll see if he can capitalize on all of that, as you do have the big attack coming in over here for Firefly with +2 weapons finished on up. A solid defensive setup with a little supply depot wallings and everything, but Charge and Blink are going to be coming on forward. Is it going to be enough? Vikings working away at those Colossus on the back lines. One of them does get saved, but it's really just the frontline gateway buffer that is disappearing very, very quickly over here for Firefly.
And nice micro coming in for Firefly, though, on the Colossus, keeping them alive, even though the Vikings are not doing anything, or just they're not doing enough. And now you talk about that gateway buffer going away. Yeah, sure, fine. But so too have the Marines. There's one Colossus still here. That micro, that hot pickup micro, the Vikings weren't able to find the value that they wanted, and now economic damage. But you got to be careful even still. There's a tank behind into the natural, and Firefly, he takes what is honestly a pretty solid fight, but he's not able to push right on through. The big deal though here for your Dragon, the missile turret goes down. It's a lot easier to micro. It's a lot easier to keep these Colossus alive, and the supply depots are gone. You can get Zealots in, but even still, yeah. Firefly, he's gonna have to back up. And I don't hate that. Look, he killed a lot of the Terran army. Yeah, he lost 2 Colossus, but it's really not that big of a deal. He's got his 4th base. He's up 11 workers. Like, everything that he could possibly want in this game is going pretty well for him.
Yeah, that attack got really, really close and dicey, it felt like, for Firefly. And I actually don't even blame Oliveira for feeling like, yeah, I'm about to clean this up. but I feel like his Bioforce just ended up getting softened up just enough that most of them were in the red. And then as he started kind of like pushing away from a lot of his safety defenses and everything started going wrong as the like a 1 or 2 Archons getting 1 or 2 shots off with the Colossus in the back lines, like you were saying, just staying alive a bit longer. Man, that fight really turned around quite quickly there, and it's gonna make things a bit awkward now because I feel like you were saying, Firefly has cleaned up so much of the army that he is able to do these little pokes and prods, has to be careful not to lose too many of his zealots over here or anything, but he kind of has a bit of leeway to just do whatever he wants back on his own side of the map during this.
Oh, look at this as well. We got a couple just random adepts here. Adepts, are they the best harassment unit against Terran? No, they're not. It takes 3 of them. Instead, you're not as efficient. But Firefly, I guess, had them early on. He sneaks them into the natural because Fear Dragon, we talked about the Sim City outside between the natural and the third. There's no Sim City in the natural. You can run in if you want to. It's free. No one's stopping you. So 4 more SCVs go down. It's just a little bit more pressure. And the big deal, more than anything, I mean, Oliveira, he's got his 4th base halfway done. Firefly's 5th base is done. His economy is going so incredibly well. The one thing I'm worried about, really, if there's one thing to be worried about with this Protoss player right now, he's sitting on 4 Archons. Ghosts are on the field. There are still Widow Mines. And he's not attacking with it. I feel like that gas that he spent on these Archons could be just so much better spent.
Yeah, I'm trying to think about the exact timing and stuff of when he was making a lot of these Archons. He's not exactly going for Psystorm. He's going to continue to bust out even more of these Archons. So you're definitely right. Ghosts can kind of sometimes feel like they just invalidate your Archons and stuff. But I guess we'll have to see how the actual engagement ends up going. Like you were saying, the Ghosts being out really are going to cause a lot of problems for this exact army composition. But Firefly has also still got a little bit more time to round out his composition. He's added on a handful of these disruptors. The Zealots can try and act as a bit of a buffer. It's definitely going to come down a bit to how the fight goes as well.
Yeah, well, you talk about having time to round out his composition. What he does not have is supply. He's maxed out. You know, he's 193 out of 200. These Archons, they're not really easy to replace. They're a lot of supply, and honestly, just a lot of dead supply. But Firefly, I do like the decision to, as I say that, do I like this? This is a terrifying sieged up position here, and the Zealots run forward. They just go down. I don't know how Oliveira, or I don't know how Firefly is supposed to break this position. They are, what are we at? Like 4 tanks. There's a bunch of ghosts. It's a massive concave. And you can't really attack through this angle either. I mean, it's pretty choked up. So Firefly, he's going to have to find a different angle. And I like he's unlocking all the rocks. He's giving himself attack opportunities, but as the Zealots run in, I mean, they're Widow Mines here. It's not going to work out. EMP is on the Disruptors. One will go down. Tank doesn't die, but here comes the flank coming in. Zealots on the right side. Vikings over top trying to knock these Colossus down. Archons, they just get EMP'd immediately, but it's the story of these Zealots on the right-hand side Fear Dragon that are doing so much. These Archons, they're still staying alive, and the army is starting to swarm here for Firefly. Both supplies go very low, but the upgrades, it's 3-2 versus 1-1. They're just killing everything.
Yeah, and remember that Firefly, even though he was maxed out, he's just continuing to build up more of a bank, so he can warp in a massive round of units over here. So a ton of Stalkers, a handful of Zealots also continue to reinforce. As long as he's able to keep this army from defending that 3rd base location, the Zealots and the Stalkers just get to absolutely ravage that base. Barely any of the Stalkers or these SCVs are able to escape. And Firefly ties up the series 1-1. Just really, really well done in that fight.
And well played by Firefly. I mean, you look at this. Okay, so what was it? I think 4 Archons, they died very quickly on the start of that fight. They just got blanketed with EMPs. They're gone. You know, the Vikings, nothing's killing them. The Colossus are going down. And you're like, wait, this is going rough here for Firefly. I mean, maybe he wants to change his composition out. Maybe he doesn't need to trade perfectly. And then the Zealots coming from the right side, and you realize, wait a minute here. He's up 3 upgrades. And the Zealots, they just shred everything.
Yeah.
Jeez, I mean, and that was actually such a perfect timing from Firefly as well. Oliveira's 2-2 was done, I think, as the fight ended. So he hit it perfectly.
Yeah, I mean, that timing definitely works out pretty gosh darn well for him. And I honestly was even a little bit surprised because it almost looked like that right-hand flank, it was a bunch of Oliveira's units, or like a small chunk of them, getting chased by this massive swarm of Zealots and some Archons and everything. It almost looked like he was kind of leading them outside, like away from the fight. But as it kind of loops back around, you realize, like, wait a second. oh no, I just led him into a big flank on me. Like this is going terribly now all of a sudden. So man, it looked like it was actually a good start there for Oliveira, especially with being able to get in on top of the Colossus and take those out as well so quickly in the fight. But man, those charge lots can really make a big difference when you start getting those surrounds though.
Yeah, I think the other thing we need to point out, I think, well, actually, I'm not sure, but I feel like a decent number of the tanks were not in the fight. I think maybe we had half of them. So just lacking in splash damage a little bit. That's the only way you were going to kill those zealots. Like, widow mines, tanks, EMPs. The upgrades mean that they are far too tanky for anything else. But hey, you know what? Firefly, I mean, I don't think Firefly looked bad at all. I don't think there was a single spot in that game where Firefly looked bad. I mean, he took maybe 2-3 probes from the Liberator. That didn't get much done. We were talking about him losing the build order carousel, but it kind of goes around and he survived the timing we were worried about. So instead, he had 2 Colossus against a 630 stim timing. I mean, that's perfect. That's exactly what you want. Oliveira has to return home. Doesn't explode economically quite well enough. The pressure, while Firefly does lose some of his army, he knocks down the army of his opponent entirely, has all the room in the world, gets up to 6 bases, and then takes that massive fight. So in the macro game, Firefly looked really, really good. And I'm not sure that there's really much I can say that, okay, well, I wish he'd done this better, which bodes pretty well for game 3.
Yeah, Firefly looking honestly pretty gosh darn strong. And like you were saying, like the kind of macro, more standard kind of setup in game. So I'm very interested to see what he's going to be busting out in game number 3. And I think that's also the cool thing is that it didn't feel like he was doing something that was really map specific. It's not like, oh, I'm taking like a gold base, or oh, I'm going for this style that really just capitalizes on the terrain layout that allows this particular unit composition or something to work out. It's like, no, he just played a very solid style for the most part after like that kind of rough early game. But he did a great job specifically intercepting the first big attack from Oliveira. I think that's where things really got set up well for him. As long as he can deflect any kind of big attacks or anything that Oliveira busts out off those like the 2 base economy initially, I actually really like Firefly's chances as the game goes on.
Yeah, a final thought though, Fear Dragon, he did take the gold at the end of the game. It wasn't
That's
quite what
true,
we were talking about, but he did take it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that is fair.
anyways, Dragon Scales is map 3. Firefly seems like he's got some momentum behind him. But in the upper left, in the red, he is the reigning world champion. Looking to go up 2-0. It's Oliveira.
Down here in the bottom right-hand side of the map, lighting his way to a potential victory and a massive upset over here, we have our blue Protoss player. He is Firefly from SSLT. Already sending his probe around, looking for proxies and things, it looks like. Yeah, very curious. I guess I assume looking for like proxy second barracks or something for Marauder or Reaper proxy. But interesting what they believe that Oliveira would feel like he wanted to go for that in game 3.
Yeah, especially considering when we think of Oliveira, at least when he, again, won Katowice, we think of him as this very macro player. This guy who just, he's going to take you to 10 minutes. He's going to do whatever. And he is going to just outplay you in the mid to late game, which is what he did in his Katowice run. Let's be clear. But part of that was, I think, is the fact that Oliveira, literally every single player he ran into, and I think a good percentage, probably 8 out of 12 or something like that, of everyone in the round of 12, he had been practicing with consistently for the last 3 months leading up to Katowice. He was literally pretty much everyone in the playoffs, he was their practice partner. And he was spamming games with them. So that's one of those things where, yeah, you probably will not win one of these cheeky games because they've seen it. You've practiced it against him quite a bit, but I don't know that Firefly is Oliveira's practice partner nearly as much. So you might expect him to do something a little bit different, like, for example, Barracks, Double Gas, Factory Command Center, that TVT opening, the heavy regression early on.
Yeah. I mean, even if you look back at the last game, it wasn't necessarily like a big all-in or super heavy aggression or anything, but it was definitely a bit of a pressure play where he busted out those early couple of Marines to join forces with the Reaper and the Heli and everything and put on a little bit of unsuspected pressure. So I think Oliveira has definitely shown he is capable of doing things like proxies and stuff. So I don't hate the idea of Firefly scouting around for it and everything, and just kind of respect the potential, especially moving into game number 3. You managed to secure yourself a game in this series that you were an underdog in. I don't hate the idea of just kind of playing out a little bit safe in game number 3, especially when you showed you can do well in a macro game.
Yeah, I would argue, by the way, that build that Oliveira went for is actually probably the more standard Terran push at this point. 730, 311, right, where you take that much later third. That was a thing a year ago, but players more and more have kind of adopted this young idea where you take your third barracks a little bit slower, but you get the first 2 faster, and then you get stim, and it works out. You have that quicker third. Regardless, though, I want to talk about this build from Oliveira because we saw something similar when I was casting with Rotterdam the other day, this barracks double cast factory. And the question then was, okay, is he going to get an armory? Because you do get that factory quicker. You might think that that's going to happen with the Widowmine opener, but again, we don't get it. Instead, it is a very quick tank coming out here, and with a tech lab going down, is this going to be effectively like a 3-1 or a 1-1-1, like a Hero Marine almost timing coming out? Do you think?
Good question. We'll see. My game just froze up.
Mine did as
well. My game is freezing up. You know what? I saw a disconnect screen for myself, so I am actually maybe just going to leave the game and cast off the preview.
Game paused.
Just to play it safe, maybe.
All right.
So, yeah. I hope it wasn't me, but I'm just going to play it safe because I saw a disconnect screen for myself for a moment. I'm not sure what's going on with that.
Well, hope is that Widowmine goes off. 5 workers go down. Marines show up in the natural. Seems like the whales between here and the Asia server decided to do a barrel roll clockwise instead of counterclockwise, and well, sometimes that messes with things. But at the end of the day, that Marine drop. We were all focused on the Widowmine and everything else. Totally ignored the Marine drop finding its way in. 5 probes do go down, and this is the kind of value that you're starting to look for here. If you're Oliveira, you're still economically, you're still down 7 probes, but at least you've gotten a scout off. At least you've killed some of the workers, and now there is that second round of push coming in. Marines have been coming out pretty quickly. There's a tank here. There's a second one in the medevac, and is Firefly going to be ready? He has blink, charges on the way, but it's not here just yet. And Fear Dragon, he's got double forge.
Yeah, this is going to be a very tough defense to make work. It's something that I think you pretty much guaranteed have to give up your third, right? Like, there's no way he's got the units around with no shield batter or anything to actually defend the third. And he is going to try and just find like some pick away damage. I don't hate that, but yeah, don't stick around here for too long, I think, with the like adepts and the units that can't really escape here.
Yeah, I think the big thing here as well is the stalkers. They're looking for some amount of reinforcements. They're not going to find him. Oliveira is mostly at home. I do think the big thing here is that he pulled his probes away immediately. He didn't lose a single one to a tank shot. And now Firefly, he's got a lot. Oh, look at this. Stalkers on the backside. He's going to be able to poach both these tanks immediately. Stalkers playing on top, get 1. They're going to get 2, but so much damage here. Oh, he doesn't even get the second one. And now all the Stalkers are dead. And oh, well, he gets the final one. But there are so many Marines here. Stim's not done. But what are you going to do? There's no shield battery. And the natural either. He didn't build that one. Yes, these Marines have a timer on them now because the medevacs are done. But you add the auto turrets as well. And I praise the ability to keep probes alive. Not much longer. You got to pull him to make sure you don't die, but I feel like Firefly is going to die anyway because, well, you know what? You know what they say, Fear Dragon? Fireflies, they're starting to become dangerous.
So painful to watch. And I mean, even small little things like the Raven and getting target fire down, but actually still gets away. So that just means that the Marines kind of had a little bit of a tank for them so they could get additional damage done. This is all done with Marines that don't have stim or anything as well, right? It's a very early attack. So the fact that he's able to get that much damage done, Oliveira, this is his game to lose now. He's got himself a massive lead, and it's nice that Firefly was able to take such a fast additional third base basically to try and compensate for things, and he's able to get this little blink stalker force up into the main base without losing anything. So I mean, kudos to him picking off a couple of workers here and there, but This is such a tough game now for Firefly.
Yep. Economically, he's not in the best spot, but it could be worse, right? He's equal on workers. But then we look at the army supply, and it's 46 to 8, and I don't know. I don't care how many upgrades you have. Certainly he has none, but I don't care how he could be 3-3-3 versus the unupgraded Terran Bio, and I still don't think he wins this fight. It's going to be really, really difficult, but he's doing a good job buying time. Right now we're at 20 army supply, although again 8 of that or 6 of that is just sitting here in the Colossus that is not yet been birthed, so even that's not going to be all that great as we see the Raven finally goes down but drops another auto turret, kills more sentries, and yeah, some of the Marines are hidden away, but Firefly unfortunately not able to hold on against the pressure of Oliveira.